Hello, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you're listening to this. Good evening. I'm David Rothkopf. This is the DSR Daily. It's Monday, 1 week from the day that America finally becomes great again. And we're going to report on that, just how we become great each and every day. It's exciting. I'm sure you're excited. We're excited. I'm not going to tell you what our addresses are anymore. We're at undisclosed locations, but we'll report on it honestly. You know who will report on it? Not just me. Riley Fessler. How are you doing, Riley?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. And Minna Stein. How are you, Minna?
I'm a little shocked that before this moment we were broadcasting our addresses.
Well, just yours.
Oh, okay.
People want to contact the DSR network. Reach Minna Stein at Fabulous Estate.
LLC.
LLC, yeah, exactly. downtown DC. What are you starting us off with today, man?
President Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Who? I don't remember him.
I know. He is still the president, as it turns out.
As it turns out, yeah.
In this worse, less great America. And Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu discussed ongoing negotiations for a ceasefire and the release of hostages held by Hamas, with a focus on securing an agreement before the U.S. presidential transition in this month, January of 2025. Netanyahu updated Biden on the progress of talks, including the involvement of high-level Israeli officials, while the Biden administration continues to push for a deal. The conflict, which began with the deadly Hamas attack in October 2023, has resulted in significant casualties, with over 46,000 Palestinians killed in Israel's ongoing military operations.
Yeah, at least. The Lancet came out last week and said it's likely 50% or more, greater than that. The Israelis, of course, are divided on the issue of even getting a settlement here. And one of the members of Netanyahu's cabinet today put out a statement saying any deal would be a betrayal and would be wrong, and the war needs to be fought on, and Gaza needs to be, literally, he used the word cleansed. Pretty gross. Biden's giving a speech today on foreign policy, kind of a summation, undoubtedly an effort to shape views of his foreign policy. Personally, I was invited to go. It's at the State Department. And I decided I don't want to go. First of all, I don't like to be in big crowds of people. And second, and I don't like to wait in line. I just don't. Okay, I'm sorry. It's just me. But the other thing is, they're going to want then people to go and write articles saying what a great foreign policy. And while I think Biden knows foreign policy, and while I think he did some good things, rebalancing America's sort of strategic focus to the Asia Pacific, building alliances, building the NATO alliance, supporting Ukraine, I also think he did some really troubling things, including most notably the policy with regard to Gaza. And I just don't think I can overlook that. So I thought I'll let somebody else write about it. But of course, we'll watch this. And the rumor is that, Trump wants this resolved before he comes into office so he can focus on other things. We'll see. We'll see whether that happens. Apparently, Netanyahu has enough votes to approve a deal, even without the far-right members of his coalition. The question is, will he want to? And what damage would it do if he did so? We'll see. Riley?
U.S. Special Counsel Jack Smith, known for leading federal investigations into Donald Trump for efforts to overturn the 2020 election and mishandling classified documents, resigned from the Department of Justice as Trump prepares to return to the presidency. Smith's resignation, revealed in a court filing, followed the completion of his work and the submission of his final report.
The completion of his work?
The completion that he was willing to do, I guess. Or was
as far as he was willing to go. Okay. Go on.
Trump, who has frequently criticized Smith and characterized the investigations as politically motivated, celebrated the resignation and has hinted at retribution against those involved in the investigations.
Yeah, that would be terrible, obviously, to do retribution. And I think Jack Smith is an honorable man who worked hard. I think he made some tactical errors in how he approached this. I think Merrick Garland made some tactical errors on how he approached this. And I know there are a lot of people out there who defend them and think they're wonderful people, including many of my friends who actually know them and think they're wonderful people. But here's the deal, folks. 4 years ago, Donald Trump led an effort to overthrow the United States government. He also stole a bunch of highly classified documents. He also obstructed justice and did a bunch of other things throughout his presidency. And 4 years later, not only is he not being held to account, he is being returned to the presidency without us knowing the details of those cases. And he now will have immunity, and he will be able to do whatever he wants, not just in terms of retribution, but in terms of anything at all. And that's a failure of our justice system. You want to defend Garland? You want to defend Smith? Have at it. You want to say, the wheels of justice turn slowly? Have at it. But also, keep in mind the other platitudes that people typically use in situations like this for a reason. The most notable of which is justice delayed is justice denied. And if you are rich and if you are powerful in America, you have the ability to delay justice, to distract justice, to throw dust up in the eyes of justice, and therefore to avoid justice. And we have never seen this more clearly than in the course of the past several years, months, weeks, and even days, because, of course, last week, President Trump was found, guilty of being a felon, 34 counts. And the court said, yeah, okay, that's fine. Did nothing, you go home. Thanks. You'll be president, so no punishment for you. Now, if you were, poor black guy who stole a loaf of bread, he'd be in the slammer. But that's the way our system works. And so for all of you lamenting or fearing the loss of democracy in America or the undoing of our justice system, eyes open. It's been going on for a long time.
Los Angeles authorities are warning against scams and price gouging as thousands of displaced families search for housing after wildfires devastated neighborhoods. Sheriff Robert Luna and California Attorney General Rob Bonta emphasized that price hikes above 10% are illegal during the emergency, and those found exploiting the situation through illegal activities, including looting or fraudulent schemes, will face legal consequences. Despite these warnings, reporters have surfaced landlords dramatically increasing rents, with some listings nearly doubling, prompting concerns that some are either unaware or disregarding the law.
Yeah, unaware doesn't seem really that plausible in the current environment. There are literally thousands of families that are looking for homes. LA had a housing crisis beforehand, just as the entire country has a housing crisis, something that doesn't get the attention it deserves. What happened, of course, was that a lot of hedge funds and others bought up real estate and are keeping it empty or doing other things to maximize their profit. And doing so at the expense of people who are renting. And if you live in a city and you're trying to rent an apartment, you know that this is bad. But of course, it's much worse in LA. And the situation is not helped by the fact that there is a political food fight going on, that Trump and Musk and others are trying to blame the fires on Democratic officials. And one Republican senator over the weekend suggested that the incoming Congress will not help California without strings being attached. And others suggested that perhaps Governor Newsom and Mayor Bass in LA need to go from their jobs before they, expect to get any aid. That, of course, is not the way the American system works or should work. And in fact, Governor Newsom has been exemplary throughout this, being involved, trying to do what could be done to help address this. And one of the things that he's done that I think is quite interesting, although it's unfortunate that he had to do it, is he's created a website so that the lies and disinformation that are being spread by the other side could be debunked, and you can go and look it up and get the truth. And that's getting increasingly hard to find these days. And more power to him for doing it. The bad news is that the weather report for the next couple of days shows winds increasing in California, including up to the kind of levels that led to these fires in the beginning. Perhaps not up to the very, very high levels, but high enough that the concerns that fires will start and spread again over the next few days go up. The area that has been burnt to the ground in California and LA is twice the size of the island of Manhattan. So, put it in perspective. This is a natural disaster of a kind we have not ever seen in the United States. Many, many, many times bigger, for example, than the Great Chicago Fire of the 19th century. And it is going to take tens of billions of dollars to rebuild. And it is going to be a very, very tough task for LA. It's going to be a long time before it truly recovers. Riley?
Incoming Trump administration officials have begun vetting career civil servants at the National Security Council about their political leanings, voting history, and social media activity, prompting concerns over the future of institutional expertise and nonpartisan counsel within the agency. Trump's pick for National Security Advisor, Representative Mike Waltz, has signaled plans to replace all non-political appointees with personnel fully aligned with Trump's agenda, causing some staff to preemptively prepare for departure. Waltz defended the strategy as ensuring alignment with the president's goals, but former NSC officials warned such actions could undermine national security policymaking and deter top talent from public service.
Could? No, would. Okay, this is catastrophic. This is terrible. This is the things that have been warned about throughout this campaign coming to life. Mike Waltz is one of the better appointments that Trump has made, and the fact that he is following through and he is doing this is extremely dangerous. The National Security Council is a repository of expertise for a reason. And that is that, what could be more important than preserving the national security of the United States, particularly in a world in which enemies are manifold and threats increase on a daily basis. To suggest that the reason you ought to be providing national security advice is that you agree with President Trump or that you are loyal to President Trump above all things, including presumably doing things that he says that are not in the national interest or are not legal, is profoundly dangerous. Consider it in the context of a crisis, consider it in the context of a war, consider it in the context of the use of nuclear weapons, consider it in the context of the fact that Trump and some of those around Trump have shown sympathy to our adversaries. And so to be consistent with Trump's views is to, by extension, be compliant to the views of Vladimir Putin, for example. That's not only not in the U.S. interest. That is the kind of thing that foreign intelligence services would have sought to do much less successfully on a much less greater scale, as to advance their interests. This is a dark moment. I've written multiple histories of the NSC. I've studied the NSC every year of its existence. I've spoken to every national security advisor who lived in my lifetime during the course of the writing of those books. And I can tell you this, every single one of them, Republican or Democrat, every single serious national security official I know abhors this decision and feels that it is profoundly dangerous for the United States. If it is extended throughout other government agencies, of course, it's much, much worse. It's the kind of thing we're going to be watching very closely over the next several weeks and months. But red alarm lights flashing on this one.
As the confirmation hearings for President-elect Donald Trump's new administration begin, he announced several new nominees, most of whom previously served in his first term. Key picks include Paul Lawrence for Deputy Veterans Affairs Secretary, James Danley for Deputy Energy Secretary, and David Fatuhi for Deputy EPA Administrator, among others. The hearings, starting this week, will also feature high-profile nominees like Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary, with senators probing their qualifications and past controversies.
Yeah, you'll probably never hear those names again unless they're involved in some kind of scandal. Those are very important jobs. However, the deputy in most of these agencies ends up being the kind of chief operating officer and is the one who actually makes sure that programs are implemented or that the agency runs well. And so, very often you'll get a high profile cabinet secretary who's got then a deputy who's got a lot more work to do because cabinet secretary is expecting to be out there giving speeches and not actually running the agency. Of course, we also have this week beginning hearings into the various nominees for the top jobs. Up this week, for example, will be Pete Hegseth, and there's already a controversy about Pete Hegseth because Democrats on the committee that is going to have to review him suggest that certain key elements of his history are not in the background materials provided by the FBI, and that the FBI might not have done a thorough investigation into Hegseth, much as it did not into the charges against Judge Brett Kavanaugh before he joined the Supreme Court. If that's the case, it's going to make these hearings even more difficult and contentious. And of course, it undermines the purpose, which is to get the best qualified people into the top jobs for this country. Hegseth, while Trump has named many people who are qualified, even if I don't agree with them, or even if you don't agree with them, there are several who are just not qualified for the job. Hegseth has never run anything in his life, and he's being asked to run the largest organization on earth. He's never had any defense policy experience. He's being asked to be responsible for our national defense and a budget of approaching $900 billion. He has character flaws. He has extreme views, including white supremacist views. He does not belong anywhere near the Department of Defense in any capacity. There are similarly problems that are emerging regarding, Tulsi Gabbard's background. In fact, they've said now that her hearings will be delayed because certain information is missing. Whether that information stays missing or not is a source of some concern. Those two, RFK Jr., Kash Patel, Mehmet Oz, those are the ones who are completely unsuited to the jobs they've been nominated for. But my guess right here is some of them are going to get through. And we are going to have some senior officials who are not only inappropriate for their jobs, they're grotesquely unqualified for their jobs by virtue of character, ideology, or background, or all three of those things. That's going to be big news this week as we go forward. Anything you guys want to add to all that?
Nope.
I think you said everything we were both thinking.
Oh, yeah, that's what I try to do. I try to channel you guys. Sit there and I go, what's Minna thinking? And usually it's, I hope the podcast is over soon. Because Minna likes a nice, crisp podcast. But here we are.
For me, it's because I want to go get my coffee.
Yeah, you haven't had your coffee yet?
No, I need to wake up.
What are you doing, Riley?
See the sacrifice we're making for all of you getting up early in the morning to do this. Glad you're listening. We've got a full set of all our podcasts coming up this week. And we hope you will join us for all of those because as I've just intimated, it's going to be a heck of a week this week before the inauguration, which takes place on the 20th. So join us for everything we do here at the DSR Network. And we look forward to rejoining you then. Bye-bye.